I was in the middle of mixing a custom rose gold tint for my 2 p.m. appointment. Just a normal, busy Tuesday at the salon. But then, the sound of the blow dryers didn't end Appos. Tea just fade. They turned into a single, piercing note, like a crystal glass shattering in slow motion inside my ears. I reached for the counter to steady myself, but my hand passed through the air like it was made of smoke. I remember seeing the mixing bowl tilt, watching the pink dye spill across the floor in a perfect, silent arc. And then, I wasn't Appos, tea standing anymore. But I wasn't Appos, tea on the floor either. I was hovering, listening to a voice that didn't Appos, tea come from a person, calling a name I hadn't Appos, tea heard since I was 6 years old. Working in a salon, you get used to a certain kind of chaos. The hum of the dryers, the smell of hairspray, the constant flow of stories from the people in your chair. I'm the kind of person who feels everything. I absorb my clients' Appos, stress, their heartbreaks, their joys. But for weeks, I'd been carrying a weight that wasn't Appos, tea theirs. My head had this dull, rhythmic pulsing. I'd tell myself, and quote, "It and Appos. S just the chemicals, Emma. It and Appos. S just the long hours on your feet," end quote. That day, the air in the break room felt heavy, like I was breathing in honey. I had just stepped away to grab a quick coffee. I remember looking at my reflection in the small, spotted mirror above the sink. My eyes looked bright, but my skin had this strange, translucent quality. I felt a end quote, spark end quote, behind my left eye. Not painful, just a flicker, like a light bulb about to burn out. I remember trying to unbutton my stylist's smock, but my fingers felt like they belonged to someone else. They were clumsy, slow. I looked down at my shoes, just my regular black sneakers, and for some reason, they looked incredibly far away. The floor seemed to be stretching, pulling me into a long, narrow tunnel. I reached for the door handle to go back out to the floor, back to the safety of the noise. But I never made it. The last thing I felt was a sudden, electric surge. Not a shock, but a wave of pure energy that started at the base of my skull and rushed down my spine. The world didn't end Appos, tea go black. It went white. A white so bright it felt like music. The electricity, it didn't hurt. That's the thing I still struggle to explain to my friends. We think of a seizure as this violent, terrifying thing, and maybe it looked like that to anyone watching. And Hung Tu Ben Trong? It felt like I was being, end quote, unzipped, end quote. 1 second, I was a 33-year-old woman with aching feet and a messy divorce, and the next, I was just a vibration. The physical world began to lose its grip on me. I felt my muscles stop fighting. I felt my heart slow down, not out of failure, but out of a sudden, profound peace. It was like being in a crowded, noisy room for your whole life, and suddenly, someone closes a heavy, soundproof door. The silence was magnificent. I didn't end Appos, tea feel the floor beneath me anymore. I didn't end Appos, tea feel the air on my skin. I felt, end quote, dissolved, end quote. I remember a brief moment where I thought about my next client. I thought, end quote, I forgot to tell Sarah the toner needs 10 minutes, end quote. But that thought felt so light, so unimportant, that it just drifted away like a dry leaf. Every sensation of being, end quote, human, end quote, was being replaced by a sense of expansion. I wasn't Appos, tea a body anymore. I was a frequency. And then, the white light I mentioned, it started to pulse. It wasn't Appos, tea just light. It was a sound, a deep, resonant hum that felt like it was welcoming me back to a place I had forgotten I belonged to. I felt a sudden, end quote, pop, end quote, like the pressure equalizing in your ears on a plane, and I realized I was no longer looking through my eyes. I was seeing with my entire being. I was standing, if you can call it that, in the corner of the break room, near the ceiling. I looked down and saw a woman huddled on the floor. Her hair, the hair I'd spent so much time styling that morning, was fanned out across the linoleum. It was me, but I felt no panic. I didn't feel the urge to scream or run back to her. Instead, I felt a deep, overwhelming sense of compassion. I saw her, me, not as a person, but as a vessel that had been carrying so much unspoken pain. I saw the coffee mug I'd dropped. The liquid was still spreading slowly. In that state, time didn't end Appos, tea move in a straight line. It felt like I could see every drop of coffee as a tiny, sparkling universe. Then, the door opened. I watched my coworker, Marcus, walk in. I saw the exact second his expression shifted from a smile to pure, focused urgency. I watched him reach for his phone, his fingers trembling. I wanted to tell him, and quote, "Marcus, look up. I and Apos am right here, and I've never felt better," end quote. But I realized my voice wasn't Apos, something that could be heard by ears anymore. I noticed something strange then. The walls of the salon began to vibrate. Every object, the styling chairs, the mirrors, the bottles of shampoo, they all had end quote, glow end quote, around them. I realized that everything in our world is made of the same humming energy. I saw a discarded magazine on the table. It was open to an ad about end quote, perfect beauty, end quote. From where I was, that concept seemed so hilariously small. I wasn't Apos, looking at end quote, beauty end quote, anymore. I was looking at end quote, essence, end quote. I felt a pull toward the back of the room, through the wall. I didn't Apos, passed through the wall so much as I became the same frequency as the wall. And then, the salon simply dissolved. The physical world was gone, replaced by something that didn't Apos, have a floor or a ceiling. I was no longer observing a room. I was being pulled into a conversation. The silence of the salon was replaced by a end quote, symphony end quote, of voices. I wasn't Apos, in a tunnel or a garden. I was in a vast expanse of pure sound. It felt like being inside the world's most beautiful choir, where every note was a person's soul. And then, I heard it. A voice, not loud, but deep enough to vibrate through the very center of my being. It didn't Apos, speak in English. It spoke in end quote, knowing, end quote. It began to play back moments of my life, but not the moments I expected. I saw a customer from 3 years ago. I'd forgotten her name, but I remembered her hair, thin, brittle from illness. I remembered how I'd spent an extra hour gently styling it, making her feel beautiful when she felt her worst. The voice showed me the end quote, glow end quote, that act of kindness created. It was like a golden thread woven into the fabric of the universe. But then, the atmosphere shifted. It became heavier, cooler. Names began to echo in the space. Names of people I hadn't Apos, thought of in years. My ex-husband, an old friend who had betrayed me, a father who was never there. Even in this place of light, those names felt heavy, like stones in my pocket. I realized that even though I died, I was still carrying the end quote, weight end quote, of my grudges. I saw that my anger toward them wasn't Apos, hurting them. It was only dimming my own light. The voice asked, without words, end quote, "Why are you still holding what is no longer there?" End quote. I saw that forgiveness isn't Apos, about saying what they did was okay. It's about realizing that their pain created their actions, and my pain was keeping me bound to them. I felt a sudden, massive release. It was like those names, those end quote, stones end quote, turned into birds and flew away. The realization hit me. Some names still carried pain even there, but they only had power because I gave it to them. The voice hummed with a sense of approval. And then, I felt a sharp, rhythmic pulling. The symphony began to fade, replaced by a harsh, mechanical sound. "Stay," I whispered, but the voice replied, "Go back. Your hands have more threads to weave." The return was like being pulled through a straw. The vast, musical expanse of the end quote, voice end quote, was suddenly replaced by a cold, sharp reality. My first sensation was the smell, not of hairspray or chamomile, but of sterile latex and the metallic tang of blood where I'd bitten my tongue during the seizure. I opened my eyes to see the fluorescent lights of the ambulance. They were flickering, and every flicker felt like a physical blow to my brain. "She's back," a voice said. A human voice. It sounded so flat and thin compared to the one I'd just left. For months after, I felt like a stranger in my own life. I'd be standing at the salon, holding a pair of shears, and I'd suddenly hear a faint echo of that celestial symphony. I'm still emotional, maybe more than before, but it's a different kind of emotion. I used to hold on to the end quote, stones end quote, of my past. I used to let the names of people who hurt me dictate my mood. But now, when those names come to mind, I just remember how they looked in that place of light. Small, fragile, and already forgiven. I've changed how I work, too. When a client sits in my chair and starts venting about their problems, I don't just listen to their words. I listen for the hum, I look for the golden threads in their lives that they're too distracted to see. I realize that the Salon isn't just a place to change how people look. It's a place where I can help them lighten the load they're carrying. The seizure was terrifying for Marcus and my clients to witness, but for me, it was the moment I finally learned to breathe. I still have a scar on my tongue from that day. It's a small, physical reminder that some names still carry pain, but we don't have to carry the names. The voice was right. My hands had more threads to weave, and now I make sure every thread is made of light.